I thought I'd have a little bit of a change here in how I've been making videos. I haven't been responding to a lot of the conflict and the discussions that deal with creationism. So I thought I would respond to an argument made by this fellow Bryan that he's made in support of creationism and against evolution. So I printed them out here, and I'm just going to read them and respond as I go. So he says, the only part of evolution in which any considerable interest is felt is evolution applied to man. A hypothesis in regard to the rocks in plant life does not affect the philosophy upon which one's life is built. Evolution applied to fish, birds, and beasts would not materially affect man's views of his own responsibilities, except as the acceptance of a non-supported hypothesis, as this, might be used to support a similar hypothesis in man. The evolution that is harmful is the evolution that destroys man's family tree, as taught by the Bible, and makes him descendant of the lower forms of life. Well, first of all, I see no reason why acceptance of evolution should shake someone's foundation irreparably. Already, different people are living their lives with different foundations. And if your foundation is built on assumption which does not allow evolution, well, if you do accept it, then obviously it will be shaken. But it's not the end of the world. It's not like you can't rebuild a structure which is more firm. And secondly, lower forms of life, when you use those words, it reveals your lack of humility. And if you kind of want to understand where I'm coming from that, I'd suggest you look at my last video. I haven't seen any human forms of life that I would call high since I left Northern California a few months ago. Okay, going on to say, the objection to Darwinism is that it is harmful as well as groundless. It entirely changes one's view of life and undermines faith in the Bible. Evolution has no place for the miracle or the supernatural. It flatters the egotist to be told that there is nothing that his mind cannot understand. Well, evolution is neither harmful nor groundless. It's based on evidence. That means it is grounded. It's very well grounded. And it describes a great truth, which we know is undeniable. If you think that evolution is harmful, that says something about you and your beliefs and your culture. It says nothing about evolution per se. Evolution proposes to bring all the processes of nature within the comprehension of man by making it the explanation of everything that is known. No, evolution only explains the diversity of life. It does not explain everything that is known. Blah, 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 blah. Evolution does not explain creation. It simply diverts attention from it by hiding it behind eons of time. No, evolution explains quote-unquote creation over geological time. Well, when man commences with the first chapter of Genesis and blots out the Bible story of man's creation, not because the evidence is insufficient, but because the miracle is inconsistent with evolution. If he is consistent, he will go through the Old Testament step by step and cut out all the miracles and all the supernatural, the virgin birth of Christ, his miracles and his resurrection, leaving the Bible a storybook without binding authority upon the conscience of man. Well, if all of your beliefs are dependent on a literal interpretation of Genesis, I'm sorry, but your beliefs are wrong. Your beliefs, a belief in any religion need not be based on a literal interpretation of Genesis. There are a vast number of more liberal people of faith who have no trouble accepting the biblical creation story as a metaphor. There's no reason to throw everything out if you feel that way. I'm sorry. In the matter of education, Christians do not dispute the right of any teacher to be agnostic or atheistic. Yeah. The Christians do deny the right of agnostics and atheists to use the public school as a forum for the teaching of their doctrines. Well, evolution is not an atheist doctrine. The test of theism is not belief in a 6-day biblical creation story involving special creation. That is not the test of theism. Therefore, accepting evolution says nothing about atheism or agnosticism per se. The Bible has in many places been excluded from the schools on the ground that religion should not be taught by those paid by public taxation. If this doctrine is sound, what right have the enemies of religion to teach irreligion in the public schools? If the Bible cannot be taught, why should Christian taxpayers permit the teaching of guesses that make the Bible a lie? Again, evolution is not synonymous with irreligion. Our opponents are not fair when we find fault with the teaching of Darwin's unsupported hypothesis. They talk about Copernicus and Galileo and ask whether we shall exclude science and return to the Dark Ages. Their evasion is a confession of weakness. We do not ask for the exclusion of any scientific truth, but we do protest against the atheist teacher being allowed to blow his guesses in the face of the student. Evolution is not a guess, it is a robust theory supported by a vast accumulation of multiple lines of complementary evidence. We stamp upon our coins, "In God we trust." We administer to witnesses an oath in which God's name appears. Our president takes an oath of office upon the Bible. Is it fanatical to suggest that public taxes should not be employed for the purpose of undermining the nation's God? Well, the appropriateness of all that is a whole different question. Some of us have problems with it. You can see that by my screen name. I would say that the greatest fanatical argument would be to have our school children have a first-class education that somehow miraculously does not include good science. Science is a critical part of good education, especially in the new competitive world, this competitive world that we live in. That would be the fanatical thing to say. Let these believers in the tree man come down out of the trees and meet the issue. Well, we are. Let them defend the teaching of agnosticism or atheism if they dare. Again, that's not what evolution is about. If they deny that the natural tendency of Darwin is to lead man to a denial of God, let them frankly point out the portions of the Bible in which they regard as consistent with Darwinism or evolution applied to man. Well, evolution is agnostic or uncaring. It says nothing about the vast majority of the Bible. The only part that it says something about, arguably, is the creation story in the beginning. Evolution tells us nothing of the very beginning. It tells us nothing of the end. All it does is let us know how a few things happened along the way.